Yes, it's interesting. I mean, look, the UK-European relation is centuries old, and obviously in relation to the EU, there's the last few years have been dominated by that. So I think if we're talking about going outside of our comfort zone, look, any efforts to get over the Brexit divisions and smooth trade, I think are welcome. I think you need to look very carefully at what the price would be for that. So there's talk of dynamic alignment. I think we would want to analyse very carefully the risk-reward of that. Normally when countries engage in free trade agreements and negotiations, they don't give up their regulatory authority. Certainly the US hasn't, the EU wouldn't with third countries. But I do certainly look at what the UK government has done with the US on tariffs, particularly if that reduction to 10% is a stepping stone to a new FTA. That would be great news. I think even more, if we're talking about going outside your comfort zone, the free trade negotiations coming to a conclusion with India, critically important. And actually that's one of the things when I was in government I started. I applaud the fact if we can get that FTA over the line. And of course, previously under the previous government, which I was involved, we signed up to CPTPP. Again, that's focusing on growth markets from Mexico to Malaysia. And again, if we're talking about getting outside of the traditional comfort zone, I think that's important. And then you could look at the FTA negotiations in the Gulf, which I know the current government are pursuing. I think if you look at it in the round, there are some really exciting possibilities down the line for the UK.
Yeah, and Dominic, just a final one from me on this one as well. And again, it seems that businesses are really welcoming the reality of closer links with Europe as well, especially given our concern about the US political cycle and what that could mean for Britain and Europe, and indeed, of course, the threat from China and elsewhere, which you talked about in terms of critical minerals as well. But, I mean, do you think the danger for the Prime Minister and danger for the mainstream political parties at the moment is actually there are still a very large part of the British electorate and indeed now a growing side of the right wing of British politics that actually thinks we should have less links with Europe and actually we should deliver Brexit in a more aggressive way as well, and actually reform is beginning to pick up a lot of votes across the country? Is that a real danger for, dare I say it, for the Conservatives but especially for the Labour government?
I think there's a lot of political noise around this. I think we should look at it in a sober, cool, calm way. There are some things which I've always thought under the right terms would be sensible, like a youth mobility scheme, but that's something that works both ways for the EU and the UK. What I'd be careful about doing, given the conversation we've just had in the round about the global picture and the opportunities globally, particularly in the growth markets from Latin America to the Gulf to Asia, is tying our hands too much. And so I would just in a very sober way look at, for example, fisheries, there's talk about farm and food products, and just make sure that we retain our autonomy for the future. I think anything that can reduce friction is good. Anything that reduces our autonomy for the future is something that I would be more reticent about. And so I'd ignore the political noise as much as you can. Easy to say, now I'm outside of politics, easy to say in the media, but I would try and take a very cool, long-term, risk-reward approach to it.